All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of XS Succeed. This is Gearface, and I'm so glad to be joined once again after a pretty long hiatus by Faust. Faust, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, sure. Hi.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you a little bit. Today, we are talking a little bit about Heidi from way back in Red Horizon. In my characteristic way, know nothing about this character. Super excited to learn a little bit from Faust. Um, Couple disclaimers before we get started, as always. Number one, you should play Exceed for fun. Viewer, we talk about playing Exceed to win on this show, and sometimes those two things overlap, sometimes they don't. If the lines of play we're describing don't sound fun to you, I think you probably shouldn't play that way. Um, and instead, play in a way that you do find fun. Playing to win with Heidi in particular is kind of complicated because she's a Red Horizon character, which is to say she's been rotated out of competitive play for years and years now. So there's a decent chance that any local tournament you go to won't have her in rotation, but it doesn't mean that you can't have fun with her at the kitchen table or at just a legacy tournament that you find somewhere online. Um, Disclaimer number two is we don't know everything. Um, I don't know anything. Faust knows some things. Together, we kind of average out. Um, uh, Exceed's not a solved game. Don't take anything that we say, any of the various always do this, never do this that we're going to be saying. Don't take any of those at face value. Take them all with a grain of salt. Um, find your own lines of play with this character, especially because this character is kind of old and hasn't been. I don't think has been put through the competitive ringer with more recent seasons. There's a lot that we kind of have to speculate on here. So please do find your own lines with this character in Modern Exceed. But yeah, with all that said, Faust, please tell me a little bit about Heidi.
Heidi was my first character that I ever played way back, and I think it was 2016 when this came out. So that's almost 10 years now, which
That's
goes to show how old
that's
this game
crazy.
is. Yeah. Um, and for people who are more like with modern Exceed,
Yeah.
Heidi, it was the precursor to King Knight. Um,
Okay.
as her ability is almost the same. It's a little different, but
Go
it's
grab
it's
King
very
Knight real
similar.
quick.
Um, as if you look at the other videos on the season 1 characters, or just take a look at them yourself, you'll see a lot of Modern Exceed has evolved from a lot of those season 1 cards and kind of been fixed and changed. So if we look at their abilities, and let's take a look at Heidi, we can see her ability is when she resolves a boost, she draws a card. And then King Knights is he has his Royal Decrees, which are extra cards that starts with the game. But the more important part is after resolving a decree or continuous boost, draw a card. Um, and the big difference there is that Heidi can use instant boost and draw a card, where King Knight cannot.
Okay.
And that is a very, very strong ability, just being able to draw a card after you boost, because you're going up cards if your boost doesn't cost any force. Whereas, if it's just your continuous boost, then it's half the boost in your deck. If it's your instant and continuous boost, it's all the boost in your deck.
Okay. So taking the boost action, I get a little bit of an economic rebate on. So the way that this would work in practice is it's my turn. I'm Heidi. I boost. I don't know. Backstep.
Yeah.
Um, he goes into play. Resolving a boost means that's what I just did, right? I put it
Yeah.
into play, and that's what resolving a boost
You,
means.
you have to complete everything on the card before you draw the card.
Got it. Okay. So I put it into play, retreat up to 4. I don't go anywhere because I'm in the corner. Um, I draw a card, and then I draw for end of turn, correct?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
this is notably most important on focus, because you do the stuff on focus reading, and then you draw a card. So you'll name a normal attack and then strike, and then draw a card before your opponent actually strikes.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. But so
Yeah.
this works even when the boost causes me to strike, but for all the ones
Yeah.
that don't, instant and continuous, I'm essentially uh boosting it maybe not boosting while taking the prepare action because it's taking something out of my hand, but it's like boosting and changing cards one at the same time.
Effectively. And then you get a bonus from whatever the boost is that you
Sure,
choose.
yeah, and hopefully that bonus is something that I wanted to do anyway. That's why I played the boost. Otherwise, I would have just prepped.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Um, So she almost never runs out of cards. There's like one instance where that happens, but Generally, she's never going to get back into a situation where you're completely out of cards and stuck. Um, and that makes her significantly better when most of her specials and ultras are kind of okay. There's a few of them that are really good, but like most of them are just not great.
Okay. So a lot of her power is going to be coming from using the boost action to make these mediocre to decent shapes uh, a little bit scarier while still maintaining an economy while she does it.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah,
And
I can
then,
definitely see the comparison to King Knight then. King
yeah.
Knight also has some shapes that are like, yeah, they're fine. Um, and then a lot of his game is coming from uh, keeping his card draw rolling while he's doing something that progresses his game state.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Heidi's Exceed mode is a very Season 1 Exceed mode where it's the same ability, and then on the back it's just better. And it's slightly too good for, like, fair Exceed,
Okay.
like most of the Season 1 characters have on their Exceed mode, if they want to Exceed, which is
Okay.
she still draws a card when she boosts, but now whenever she has a continuous boost in play, she gets +2 power.
Okay. And that's either or, right? So it's not I put light into play, I have +2 power. I also put defend into play, now I have +4 power. It's if I have any number of continuous boosts in play, I also have +2 power.
Yes, you
Okay.
don't stack it up, it's just +2 power.
Okay. That's still good, right? Like that's
Yeah,
still now light is way of the warrior, for example,
yes,
which is that's
that
messed
draws
up.
you 2 cards.
Yeah, that's a really screwed up boost and doesn't cost an ultra and a force to play.
Yes,
Um
exactly.
okay, so it sounds like then, and not even looking at uh the quality of any continuous boost she might have in her kit. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I would like Way of the Warrior. I would like +4 power. I don't even know if there's a boost in Exceed that gives you +4 power
There's
like that.
Giant Killer on
Oh,
Beheaded,
on
but it
Beheaded.
costs a
There you
force.
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love Giant Killer. I would love +2 power and defend. Like
Yeah.
just among the normal boosts, that's giving me quite a bit of value.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So generally you just want to kind of exceed on her. As um like season one has somewhat of a bad habit of usually putting a lot of the character's power in one aspect of their kit and then leaving the other to be bad or mediocre. And they kind of make up in that way to be mostly fair by just having crazy turns and then being useless on other turns.
Okay. It's like they put all the cards into a blender, but they didn't blend them super well. So there's
Yes.
still like chunks of power here and there, and then there's really smooth parts where there's kind of nothing.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And
So
yeah.
we should expect a couple of these cards to basically just be force then.
Somewhat. Heidi's a little bit better than some of the other season one characters, like Gabrick. But she does still have some cards that you don't use half of them, or you don't. There's no card that I wouldn't say you use. Don't use any of it, but there's like parts of it that are just not used.
Okay. And I guess part of that might be because she has enough card draw that maybe her force concerns aren't so well, I mean, making the comparison to Gabrek, like
Yeah,
I would as Gabrek, I would love the ability to spend a card as force because my economy is pretty bad unless I'm at range 1.
yeah,
Okay.
um,
So we can play the is this an attack or is this a boost game with most of these cards though.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna say right now, for the most part, your goal as Heidi when you play as her is just to exceed as fast as possible.
Okay.
Um, your ultras are fine. They're not great. They're fine. But as soon as you exceed and you start doing anything on your exceed mode, you usually start winning. On your front side, you can, trade and win. But getting a 3 gauge and then exceeding and then start killing your opponent is really what you want to do.
Okay. And
Uh,
3 gauge isn't incredibly hard to hit. Like
yeah,
most characters in Exceed, especially if they don't have any particularly competing gauge priorities, other ultras, gauge
yeah,
sinks like maybe Noel has or something. They can get to 3 gauge no problem.
yeah,
Um, is her gauge generation or maybe I guess a better question is like I know a lot of Red Horizon characters need to spend gauge to move sometimes, uh,
yeah.
or change cards, and that's the main competing priority with the thing they really want to be doing. How does she do on that front? Is this something that uh, I should really expect to have to delay my exceed mode a few times before I really get it because I'm going to have to be moving around a little bit.
Not really. You can get stuck sometimes with her just because she struggles a little bit if you're at range 1. Um, but she has uh, a really good boost that moves her. She never really struggled for cards, so you can always just pay force from your hand. And there's not really anything else you're going to be spending your gauge on, unless like you really, really need to play an ultra because hers are playable. They're just usually not better than her exceed mode.
Okay. So so when we evaluate these cards, or I guess when we evaluate these boosts, really,
Mm.
like looking through and looking for that big plus sign, this one, this one, this one, this one, and obviously her normal boosts that are continuous. For like 75% of the game, should I just be pretending that these also have +2 power on them? Because that's kind of what I'm going to be doing with Heidi.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
so as we evaluate these cards, viewer, most of the time, these also say +2 power on them.
yeah, and usually you're just literally trying to get 3 gauge, and then you go from there.
Okay,
Usually you're down life by the time you get there because you're not trading well unless you can play some neutral and win some mix-ups and stuff. But then after that, it's really hard to fight against a character that effectively just has +2 power all the time.
right, and who by getting that +2 power is also progressing through her deck and filtering options and
Yeah.
doing all the things that you get out of card draw.
Yeah. And Heidi has a few other unfair things that she can do to effectively prevent the opponent from being able to defend themselves, which I suppose we'll get to later.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's the basic game plan: is get to 3 gauge and then boost a lot, and
Yeah.
look at my cards that I have in my hand and notice that a lot of them just kind of kill the opponent now.
Mhm.
Okay, makes sense.
All right. So let's start by going over her specials. These two on the end, Iron Knuckle and Dagger Strike Install, are her most important specials.
Okay.
Um, they're good attacks on them their own. Dagger Strike Install is a 1 to 3, 2 power, 6 speed. That's basically just an above curve option.
Yep.
So it beats Assault and Dive. It will at least hit if they play Sweep or Spike. So you're gonna get a gauge, and the hit effect is pretty good. At the end of the strike, play a continuous boost from your hand without paying its cost. Do not discard it after the strike. As
Okay.
is the you know pattern with season 1. The formatting is a little weird.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Um,
So this would be modern templating is like clean up if you hit uh play a continuous boost without paying its cost, sustain it or something.
um, I guess that could be it. It is a hit effect, so I don't exactly know what the modern formatting would be, but yeah, it basically is during cleanup you put the boost into play. So the boost can't affect the strike. You don't get the +2 power on this,
Right.
um, but because the boost isn't in play when you're dealing damage.
Okay, so I don't get this. I also don't get obviously speed wouldn't matter in any case, but if I
Yeah,
put fierce into play, I don't get +4 power. If I
no,
put defend into play, I'm not trading better. It's
yeah,
strictly action compression.
yeah.
Okay. I still draw a card?
You do still draw a card because you are still playing a boost or
Okay.
resolving a boost.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
And
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 notably, you don't have to pay the cost on the boost, which is nice because it actually says that. And I don't remember if this is correct in modern templating, but it used to be that if you put a boost into play, you didn't have to pay the cost, but it never stated that.
oh, okay, so there's a distinction between like play a boost
Paying
and put a
and
boost into
putting a
play.
boost into play, yeah.
Okay, I got you. And I'm noticing that several of her boosts um, do have a force cost associated with them. So this could actually be a pretty significant rebate. I mean, I'm noticing that one has
Yes,
a four force cost on an
yeah.
ultra. That's crazy.
That's that's the one you want to usually put into play.
Um,
The other the, there's a few others that are good, but that one's like the best.
okay, and I mean, even outside of that, a kind of title whirl ish shape, right? It's above curve at range 3.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be fine with that on as a defensive option. This is just kind of a good solid card.
yeah. And then
Okay.
the other thing that this card does that is really important is that Heidi is at her weakest when she has no boost in play. You can take your turn to boost, and then your opponent doesn't strike you, and then you can strike with this card, and then you still go into your opponent's turn with a boost in play.
Oh, okay. So this is also like oh God, what is that Eva card? Um Upgrade? I can't remember.
Yeah,
It,
that one
it's
sustains their boost, if that's the one you're thinking of.
yeah, the one that basically like as you're building up to a payout and you have
Yep,
like this awesome combo that you're waiting to do, but the situation isn't quite right yet. All right, well I'll strike with this thing that doesn't get rid of my boost.
yeah,
Um it with Heidi it's a little bit different. It's not maintaining the setup you already had, it's keeping any sort of setup at all.
yep,
Okay, sure. It's keeping me from being totally defenseless by not having a boost on my opponent's turn.
yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
Um, and then there's the bottom half of the card, and the attack is really good. Generally, you use this part for the bottom part because it is insane. I don't think in Modern Exceed you could really have this boost without carefully curating someone's kit. The only other character that has something similar is Propeller Knight. He has this boost on his Ultra, but it's not quite the same, which is put a continuous boost from your discard into play.
I mean, for one thing, on Propeller Knight, I think it costs quite a bit more.
It costs. I think you have to pay the cost of the boost that you put into play.
Right.
Or this one is
And
put into play, which means you don't have to pay the cost.
it might also be on an Ultra. I mean, and
It is.
this
It's
doesn't actually
on.
change the
Yeah,
what anything about what you're saying, but
yeah.
about the
I think it's on
strategic
full
implications for
broadside.
Heidi. It's on what?
I think it's on full broadside.
Yeah, it's a zero gauge Ultra boost, and you do pay all costs.
Yeah.
So, to your point about this maybe not being allowed in Modern Exceed, that's well made. That this is definitely too cheap for what you're getting out of it.
Especially because with like Propeller Knight, when he puts a boost into play, he just gets the boost. With Heidi, you also can get 2 power. And because you're playing a boost to put a boost into play, you'll draw an extra card.
Okay, so Mechanical Genius itself, I'm resolving by putting a continuous boost into play. I get my character ability from that. The
Yes, you don't
continuous
get the.
boost that I put into play, I don't double up.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to somehow find it in myself to be content with just getting another copy of Light or this crazy 4 force boost or something,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and not draw 2 cards out of it.
Yep. And
Okay.
in general, just having 4 copies of Light in your deck is pretty crazy. But
Yeah,
then having 4 copies of whatever you want in your deck is better.
right, right. So maybe that time when Light doesn't solve all my problems, some other continuous boost will.
Yeah.
Okay, so this sounds like it's in. Hmm. I was going to say this sounds like it's in close competition between attack and boost, but maybe not actually. Maybe if this were a fairer effect, it would be in close competition. But it sounds like
Yeah.
most of the time I get this card in my hand, I'm boosting with it.
Yeah, it's a good attack. It beats out a lot of things. It keeps you safe at range 3. It helps you stay set up if you want to attack somebody. But really, the bottom part is just insane when you can keep looping the same boost over and over and over again, and your opponent is out of ways to deal with that boost in particular
Right.
because they
Okay.
only have 2 texts and you have 4 copies of whatever you want.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And possibly the ability to sustain those copies for a little bit longer,
Yeah.
upside on getting those copies into play, all the cool
Mhm.
things that I get out of being Heidi. Um, is there any concern about um, where my cards end up when I'm playing this? This is discard only. And if I, for example, if I hit with a sweep,
Yeah.
um, now it's in my gauge, it's not in my discard pile. I'm going to have some amount of difficulty. I mean, not that much. I have to take the move action or something to get it in my
Yeah.
discard. Is that ever a concern, or is that something that I don't really need to worry about?
At the start of the game, it can be. You go through your deck so fast and you use cards so fast that generally you're going to have whatever card you want in your discard. The other
Okay.
time it's a problem is when you reshuffle because, if you reshuffle with cards in your gauge, then they're not going back to your deck and you also then have to put them back in your discard to be able to use them again.
Right. Okay. And because of how quickly Heidi goes through her deck, is she pretty much always going to be reshuffling?
Um, Most of the time, I mean, she really kills you fast when she's exceeded. Sometimes she kills you fast enough that she doesn't even hit the end of her deck, but um like there are some characters that can keep her at bay, so she'll have to spend more resources on it.
Okay. In like a close competitive game, it's often going to go to a reshuffle, and that
Oh,
might actually be a concern about what's in my
yeah,
cage. Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense. All right, I'm good with that. Shall we move on to Iron Knuckle?
yeah.
Okay,
So Iron Knuckle is another fast attack. It almost has the same stat line. It's just 1 to 2 instead of 1 to 3.
right.
Um, except for its hit is move the opponent 1, 2, or 3 spaces.
Oh,
Um,
that's a
it's very
way
good.
to that's a poke that beats sweep, Faust.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
that's not bad.
You can also keep them next to you if you want. You can pull them over you into the corner. Um, it's very versatile.
So it's like a super grasp,
Yeah. Except for it's not speed 7 or range 1, so it loses the grasp there. But at range 2, it's really
right?
good.
Right. Okay. Um,
Um, yeah,
maybe slightly less scary as a defensive option because it's not above curve, but otherwise, if this is going to get me the positioning that I want, it's
yeah.
seems like an easy card to mash.
And really the only things you're gonna lose to are a faster card, which isn't gonna do much damage to you, or
Sure.
focus, and then at least you get a gauge.
Okay. So in the early game, especially, that's something that I probably want.
Yeah, and then again, similar to the last card, as I said, these are probably the 2 most important cards in our kit. The boost is just better than the attack, and the attack is good.
Okay.
So
Oh,
this is one of the cards that is, again, not really something that you can have an exceed anymore. And it lets you do some heinous things in this game. The other one dealt with continuous boosts. This is non-continuous boost, except for it's from your hand instead of from your discard.
and you're not expending the boost that you're playing?
Yeah, so you just reveal it and then you use the effect.
Okay.
So the one that usually people come to first is that yes, you have 4 copies of reading.
Reading. I was about to say, yeah, I know how
Yeah,
much people love that boost, and I specifically know how many fights there have been online about whether focus or reading is better. What if you could just do both?
yeah, you can read them and then play the focus.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty scary. But this also would give me any movement that I want. Right.
yep,
Lots of ways to move around the board. It would give me tech, and I could keep tech. Um,
yeah,
any other? I guess we'll come to them
yeah.
as we get to the
Destructor
other.
Beam, which is one of our other boosts, is another one, but we'll get there when we get to that card.
Okay. Oh, and this one also sort of implicitly says you don't need to pay for its cost because I'm not playing
Yes,
the boost. Okay.
exactly.
All right. Yeah, that's
Um,
messed up.
and it's um, like because this boost exists. Like a lot of the time, giving your opponent information about your hand is bad.
Sure.
But the fact that Heidi can read you or parry things an absurd amount of times means that usually when you give her any amount of hand information, you have to get rid of it. Like there's no chance that you hold on to it because you will get punished for it. And then, usually when you read something and you whiff, you get to see their hand. And then, that's it. The focus is gone. But now when you read something as Heidi, the focus is still there and they know it's there. So they have to get rid of their cards that you can read because it's going to happen next turn if you don't.
Okay, so I'm at range 3.
Yeah.
Uh reading something. Reading spike.
Yes.
Play assault.
Mhm,
With the reading.
mhm.
Move in, gain advantage. Next turn, read them for whatever they have in their hand.
Well, if you're playing slow, you can just read them immediately because you have advantage.
That's what I mean. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I gain
yeah,
advantage from that, and then on my next turn,
yeah.
read them before
And
they have a chance to get rid of it, whatever they
keep in mind,
whatever I saw.
you're also drawing a card when you boosted this or the reading because so that you're not actually going down as many cards in your hand, and you still
Right.
keep options to attack them with.
So like with Mechanical Genius, Switchbox itself draws me a card.
Yes.
When I reveal the card from my hand, that's not resolving it, right?
No, you just use that effect.
Okay, so I merely have to be satisfied with this awesome effect not doubling up on my card draw.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Um.
Um,
The, yeah. The other thing you really have to be careful of is that while having 4 readings is great, you do have to reveal the card. So if you reveal focus and do its effect and like you whiff or you beat them, And then they have their focus. They can read your focus because they know it's in your hand, or your dive, or your block, or whatever you showed them.
Right. Right. Okay. And so, and again, looking at my kit, other than this mysterious couple, and I assume that there's not really, well, maybe there's a point to boosting mechanical genius with this.
Oh, absolutely. Which is, I was gonna get to that next. Is that
Oh yeah.
uh, you can use Switchbox to boost with Mechanical Genius.
So
So now you have six
I have
copies.
eight copies of whatever's in my discard pile.
Yeah, uh, yeah.
Okay. So
It
again,
like
kind of messed up.
you, yeah. I mean, you can effectively keep sweep and play for the entirety of the game if you want to, if you really try hard enough.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that. Sweep is a pretty
And
solid
then it
card to put
becomes
into it.
Way of the Warrior if you're exceeded.
Yeah. All right. You're selling me on this. That's quite messed up.
Yeah,
So I mean, I was gonna say that most of my instant boosts, other than this mysterious one that we'll come to,
yeah,
um, are on my normals. So a lot of the things that I'm doing for utility with Switchbox would open me up to my opponent's reading.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah. You
but
have these two.
I
Yeah,
do have some things in my special kit that I could do without that fear, and
yeah,
one of them is really scary, at least.
mhm,
Okay.
yeah. The other thing, it has no particular use whatsoever. It's just kind of funny, is that you can use Switchbox to reveal your other Switchbox to reveal something else. You can
I
just show
mean,
your opponent you have an EX for no reason, apparently.
that sounds fun. I mean, it like I've seen worse ways to just stunt on the opponent and exceed. So that seems like a good thing to do. You
Yeah.
threaten them with the EX, play something else on defense or something.
Well, you get rid of one of them when you boost it, but yeah.
You know, but show them that you did have an EX and you
Yeah.
could have dealt
Yeah.
with it if you wanted to. You had a
Uh-huh.
DP. All right, I'm into it. I'll do that. Put it on your exceed bingo cards, everybody.
Alrighty.
So
Uh,
really, we can essentially treat both of these cards
Boost.
as boosts most of the time.
Yeah, and they're not bad attacks by any means. It's just like the boosts are so crazy that it almost hurts to use them as attacks.
Right. Yep, that makes sense.
All right.
And I'm good with that recommendation. Shall we move on to the rest of her
Yeah.
specials?
Let's do this one next because we mentioned it.
Sure.
Just so
Yeah, it's all good.
top these two. So this skill driver, you'll notice eventually that Heidi has a lot of cards that beat sweep, and this is another one of them. Um, so it's a 1/2, 2/4, no guard, no armor. So it's below curve. It's like a mid speed. It's unguarded, but it
Right.
does beat flows generally. It's hit, push the opponent 4 spaces, +1 power for each space that can't be pushed. So it does beat sweep at 1 and 2. Um, it beats a lot of other slows. It'll usually beat other mid speeds. Um, And notably, usually focus beats a lot of the cards that pushes you out. This one trades evenly with focus because they can't be pushed, so it does sticks if it hits a focus.
Sure. Okay. So it's mid speed with a pretty narrow loss case, and it beats a lot of important things.
Yeah, it loses to fast, and then if it's losing to a fast, generally you're not taking more than 4 damage.
Yeah, that's fair. It's similar to if you mentioned if you lose to Iron Knuckle on if you lose with Iron Knuckle when you play it on defense, you're probably taking like 3. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I don't want to derail, but I can't help but notice that this is a Gundam.
Yes.
Uh, so okay. Oh, she's in the okay. It's not. She
Yeah.
doesn't turn into the Gundam or something.
No, she has a mech. Her other
She
cards have a lot of pictures of the Gundam.
okay. Yeah. So my propensity for not looking at the cards that I'm going to be teaching or I'm going to be learning about for Red Horizon lessons have come back to bite me.
Yeah.
So she's not just a karate secret agent. She's also a Gundam pilot. That's cool. That's
Yes.
cool. Okay. Is there anything that we should read into the fact that like her like there's no difference other than the art. There's no difference between these cards, right? Like there isn't anything about her mech that impacts her gameplay.
Well, I guess now that you pointed out, it's kind of funny. A lot of the cards that have her mech on it are the ones that you want to strike with, and then the
Yeah,
ones
okay.
that have just her on it are the cards you want to boost with. That's not entirely the case, but it could help you if you're trying to learn her.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good super early like first game heuristic that might get people
Yeah.
started. That's cool. All right, yeah, but so
Um,
this is a just a solid, pretty easy to play mid speed. It seems like.
yeah, and then if you have any boost in play in your exceed, it does beat focus because it does 8.
Right. Yeah. So now it's a legitimate mid speed.
Yeah,
Beats pretty much everything slower than it,
yeah,
and is not super inconsistent. I mean, I'm not super happy about the 2 power, but it's probably 4 power.
yeah. And then the other thing is like if you lose, you're losing to a fast option that's a special, um, across, which kind of accomplishes what this card does anyway, which is push them out.
Okay.
Or they defended with assault at range 2, which is an odd choice considering that she has Iron Knuckle and
Yep.
uh, Dagger Strike.
Yep. And
So
might want to go out. If she wants to push you out, she might also want to retreat. She could play cross. Like, there's a lot of things that
yeah,
undercurve assault would lose to in that situation. That's a hard call out.
yeah. So it's a pretty good attack. When you stab some slaps on it, but when you slap some stats on it, it gets a lot better. You can put guard on it, and then it's guarded, so it doesn't lose to some of the fast. You put more power on it, and it will just break everything. You put some speed on it, and then it becomes really safe. If it's speed 6 and if you are striking, it just is on curve.
So it actually, the stats don't look like it, but it kind of has the same dynamics as like Donkey Kick on our training dummy Ryu over here. Like
Yeah,
it's very receptive to boosts.
yeah,
Well, conveniently, I'm playing the boost character, and so this
exactly.
is going to be one of my like payout cards.
Uh,
Okay.
so Steel Driver is more of an attack than a boost, but the boost has its use, and there's some really wild things you can do with it. So the boost is Destructor Beam. It's 2 force. Discard any number of cards. Your opponent must discard the same number. Now, just as a clarification, you have to discard cards. You just stop paying force, so you can't use your gauge. And if you discard an ultra, it's only discarding 1 card.
Okay.
So effectively, you and your opponent are both going down the same number of cards, but then afterwards you draw 2. But you paid 2 for this, so it's effectively the same thing. So this card kind of seems fair. I mean, it's hand disruption. Like it's strong. They get to pick the cards. It's not at random. Um, you could probably compare this to Are You Having Fun Yet, which is boost on Hazama on his Ultra. That doesn't that is paying force, but Hazama is really force hungry. Now, this is fine on its own. Like if you're playing against a season 2 character that really wants to hold on to transforms, or like some other person that has a threat that they'll just hold on to forever, you can use this to either get rid of all the other cards in their hand or that if you can, which is pretty good. But then is the part with Switchbox.
Right. Because I was going to say, like, all of the math that you just did, where it feels kind of fair, is taking into account the fact that I'm paying 2 force and this card to for the privilege of discarding more cards. And even if I
Yeah,
draw a lot of cards, I probably don't draw that many that's going to feel good to me. But
yeah,
if I just don't have to pay for it,
yeah. Then it becomes insane, and you can also discard the Steel Driver to for the effect because it's still in your hand.
I can discard the steel driver to fuel steel driver or to fuel destructor beams.
Destructor Beam, yeah,
Okay, that's fair.
yeah,
Um, so is this something that, like, a lot of times hand disruption really matters? Like, if I have 6 cards in hand and my opponent has 2,
yeah,
um, that's going to be a lot stronger than if we both have 7 cards in hand and I discard half my hand and they discard half their hand, and all I've done is inconvenience both of us. Like, it's
yeah.
better if I can totally empty them out or really get them really low on hand size, right?
Yeah, so Destructor Beam has a few things that it does in Heidi's kit that is important to consider. Now, emptying their hand, as you said, like that, is not probably that great because they still have some cards left and they get to pick.
Right.
So that makes sense. The other thing is that Heidi has, 6 readings of reshuffle. So if you can run your opponent down on cards and they have to get new ones, you're more likely to hit the readings, and then they're kind of stuck with either having to go through their deck faster so they can reshuffle or getting read 6 times.
Okay, so So a big part of like high level exceed play, especially in earlier seasons, is making yourself kind of invulnerable to reading. Like I've watched
Yeah.
enough games on like D's channel, for example, to
Mhm.
see how frequently he will, when he pays for a block or when he pays for force cost or something, he is prioritizing ditching normals known or unknown from his hand, and
Yeah.
that's like he's doing that while he's doing something good on his turn, and that's sort of how he's being efficient. If I can force them to spend their turn drawing cards, they aren't able to take the opportunity to discard normals to keep themselves invulnerable to reading. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Somewhat. It also means that they have less cards for you to guess from when you're reading. Because if they
Oh,
have,
sure. You're just upping the odds because you can see more of their discard pile because they've discarded more cards.
yeah, and also just like if they go to the end of their deck faster, they lose their option. It's a lot easier to play against somebody that has 10 cards left than someone that has 20 cards left.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, the rest of your mix-ups become a lot easier because your opponent has limited defensive options.
Yeah, and if you're getting rid of their techs or their lights or their blocks, which are normals, then they're a lot less likely to be able to defend against you because they can't tech the important boost, they can't match your light, they can't block something that they can't beat. Like
Got
the
it.
normals are good, and getting rid of them also is just good.
Got it. Are there any particular cards that we're going to be looking at for Destructor Beam to discard on our end, or is it really just the stuff you don't need right now?
Yeah, it's really the stuff you don't need right now. Generally, you'd never discard Iron Knuckle or Dagger Strike, but for
Okay.
the most part, you can kind of get rid of anything else, especially because Dagger Strike allows you to put the continuous boost back into play. So
Right.
sometimes it's almost often good to discard like this Ultra or some other boost just so you can use it again.
Oh, so you'll get it back using Dagger Strike from the discard pile. Okay.
Yeah,
Are you ever boosting this when you aren't using it with Switchbox?
I don't think I've ever done that. It's not that you can never do that. If you have like a bigger hand than your opponent and they're playing a character where you know they're holding on to something, it can be the right move.
Okay.
Especially, if you're playing as a character that has transports and you're pretty sure they're holding on to one, getting them to ditch it and having to miss that EX transform is really good.
Okay.
Um,
And so part of that consideration is going to be that hey, it would be way cooler if I could play this pretty good continue or this pretty good boost without paying the force cost. But the other part of it is that this is a good attack and I would like to
yeah,
keep it. And it's something I can actually reveal without making myself vulnerable to reading because it's not a normal.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, the other thing that I've done with Steel Driver sometimes, and if it's pretty good, if you go first, or sometimes if you go second, if you open with Iron Knuckle and Steel Driver, and the rest of your cards in your hand are kind of useless to you, you can just open by boosting with Iron Knuckle, and then doing Destructor Beam, and just ditching your entire hand and making your opponent ditch their entire hand because they mulligan for it. So it's probably all the cards they want. And then
Right.
you're gonna draw 2 cards because you boosted. So they'll have either 1 card or 0 cards, and you'll have 2 cards in your hand. And
Okay.
you're basically at a point where you ripped their mulligan away from them.
And this is specifically if you opened with like a kind of bad mulligan.
A bad
Like it
mulligan or boost that you don't care about being in your discard.
okay, sure, that makes sense. Okay. So potentially a pretty solid early gameplay to mess with
Yeah,
your opponent's attempts to form their own kind of coherent game plan.
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. Shall we move on to Mech Cannon?
yeah. So Mech Cannon is a pretty okay attack. It's a projectile that gets +2 power if you have a continuous boost in play. And then if you're in exceed mode, it's +4 power because it's you get +2 power when you have a boost in play. So it
Yep.
stacks up.
Yeah. So 3 to 6, 5, 4 is like pretty good. It's still gonna trade with sort of like uh
Blows.
like sanely templated slow projectiles.
Yeah, like
Uh
Tiger Shot or Sonic Boom or
sure,
something.
sure. 3 to 6, 7, 4 is pretty messed up.
Yeah. It's not fast, which is the problem, but you can fix that because
Oh
you need
right,
a boost
yeah.
to play. Yeah.
I would also love a 3 to 6, 5, 6.
Yeah. Or the 3 to 6, 7, 6. Now that's like really messed up. That's an ultra level of attack.
Yeah, that's literally just better than Metsu Hadoken,
Yeah,
at least in terms of stats. All right, yeah, so
yeah.
that's a screwed up attack.
It's
Um,
yeah. Again, it seems like it's like a kind of okay attack, but then you put something on it and it gets really good.
Okay, so kind of similar to Steel Driver, actually. That this is a pretty good boost delivery mechanism.
Yes.
Okay, it's just that this is close range, this is long range.
Yep. And the steel driver can set you up for mech cannon because you'll push them out to uh, sticks, and then you can hit them with mech cannon.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, and you know, at like a lot of characters have things that could deal with this, right? It's not an immediate I
Yeah.
win button the way that some projectiles are at range. But Heidi's whole deal, it seems like, is customizing her pretty decent attacks to make them unfair. So if my opponent does have, I don't know, Ryu Hadoken, for example, it might take a little bit of extra work to make this totally safe.
Yeah.
But a lot of characters, against a lot of characters, this is just going to be something that they're going to have to deal with a little bit of setup.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
And because she has steel driver and iron knuckle, you can defend with these two cards, and then follow up with mech cannon. If you want to, you know, you won't have a boost in play, but like they both can push the opponent out.
Sure, and aggressing with this card is uh, at least, I mean, you're going to keep yourself from losing the dive at the very least, and that's something that every character
Yeah.
has that could beat this on offense.
If your opponent is using a dive to beat you, honestly, I would lose to dive any day on Heidi because then they can't use deck.
But you can't use tech. That's a really good point. Okay, so
Yeah.
and on the boost character, losing a copy of tech is something that they are going to be actively trying to keep from happening.
Yeah, because they only have you generally have two techs where you can have, you know, six or whatever, and a lot of the time you win because you have a boost in play.
Right. Okay, sure. So honestly, this actually makes this card even better than I thought it was then, because most of the time, most characters do have something that would beat it, but they really don't want to play it.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then we have the boost. So this boost is interesting because it's +1 power, +1 speed, +1 armor, +1 guard. It's 1 force, and that's just in general probably fair for this boost. Like usually two stats are 0 force, and then anything more than that is like a +1 to two stats is 0 force, and then anything more than that is 1 force.
Sure.
So by itself, this card is just solid. Like you can boost with this, and then you go into your opponent's turn and you win speed dice without anything else.
Right.
And then it has other things on it.
Right. It
The
seems
big
like it.
upside,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, the big upside to this is that a lot of the modern Exceed stuff doesn't do this where it adds a bunch of stats. It makes it an EX, which
Right.
basically does the same thing.
Oh, but this could be both.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, and honestly, I was about to say that it's kind of difficult to make use of just +1 armor, +1 guard, and it's also kind of useful or difficult to make use of every stat on this card at once, because you know
Mhm.
if you're winning clean with bonus speed and bonus power, what do you need the armor and guard for? But putting this on like range 1 EX assault is messed up.
Yeah, especially if you have two more power. So then it's 4 power.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So that is an
Beats
ultra.
6, power 8. Yeah, that beats grasp. Yep.
Yeah, that there's no normals that loses to actually, and then you gain advantage afterward.
Yep.
Okay, so in Exceed mode with EX attacks, this gets stupid.
It is almost unbeatable. There's really like a few cards that will generally have the words "don't hit you" on them. Those are like the only things that are going to beat you.
Okay, so you watch out for your speed dodges, your range dodges, and things like that, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's just going to win the strike cleanly. Um,
Yeah.
it sounds like both sides of this. Obviously, everything that you're doing is stronger in Exceed mode, but it sounds like both sides of this, their use case really shows up when you're exceeded. Is
Yeah.
this a card that you would really prefer to see kind of late?
Yes and no. If your opponent doesn't have a way to dodge this because it's a 3 to 6, so they can't cross out of it, or
Right.
am I? Yeah. Then you can just do this on opener and you get a free gauge. Like that is fine because that's what you need.
Oh, and
Um,
you would rather not be at range 1, so diving is a little bit of a hassle for you.
yeah, and if you're going first, you beat dive anyway.
Right. No. I'm sorry. I mean, initiating with your own dive
Oh
would be
yeah,
something
yeah,
that you would be slightly disincentivized from doing because you don't really want to be at range 1.
yeah, and then you trade with sweep and focus and all that.
Sure.
Where this, there's no normal that trades with this.
Sure. It at least gives you a move don't move mix up, and you would
Yeah.
prefer to stay at range. It seems like.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And then late game, this card is powerful. Early game, this card is fine.
Okay.
If you can hit with something, even if you're not doing damage, you're hitting with something and getting engaged.
And that is my number one. It's kind of like a Chun Li dynamic. It's like my number one
Yes.
priority is exceeding as quickly as possible so that I can get this really scary character ability.
Yeah. Heidi can function without exceeding. It's just that she's so much better with it.
Okay. That makes total sense. And I'm noticing we have another projectile here,
Yeah.
an artillery cannon.
Yeah, this one's a little bit worse, but also a little better in some situations. So it's 4 to 7. So, um, and speed 3, which means that if they're in its range, they can just dive out of its range, no matter what.
Yeah, there isn't any board state where this would be totally safe. Again,
Yeah,
except that they would have to waste a dive doing it.
yeah, as long as you don't have boosts on it. But yeah,
Right.
and so it's a lot better in the sense that you can't block this. It ignores armor. They can't play a focus to take less damage. They can't block it. It's a good confirm. If you can put them out where they can't do anything, and then follow up with this, there really is nothing they can do.
Right.
Um, and it's got 4 guards, so you can use it to trade with other projectiles. If they have like something fast, a Hadoken would do 4, and then you do 4 back, which is
Sure.
fine. Um, and then again, this card is really good when you add a bunch of stats to it. If you add more speed or power, it's really scary. So like the extra power on it is more just free damage. The speed on it makes this card hard to deal with because once this goes up to 5 speed, um, the opponent needs to initiate with a card that boosts them in. Otherwise, there's not a lot they can do.
Right. Okay. And at this point in that situation, if I have +2 speed in play at a ranged opponent, these two cards together are covering pretty much everything they could conceivably do to me.
Yeah,
Because this would catch this would catch cross, this would catch block.
yeah,
And between the two, they're gonna do. There isn't really an answer to this.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, artillery cannon's boost is one of the few in her kit that really doesn't do a whole lot. It can be useful, but I generally just use the top part, and even then, the top part is okay. So
Okay.
the boost is Iron Grit, and it's 1 force. You can't take more than 4 damage after applying armor and strike. This is a very conditional boost because you have 1 card with 4 guard, which is this card,
Right.
and then you have Spike in the normals, and then you have Focus and Sweep that are guarded. So it
So
basically,
it isn't. It probably isn't going to do anything to confirm a hit. Right. Like I'm not. Hmm.
the,
Like
the the use case for this card is when your opponent has something really scary that does a lot of damage they're threatening with you with,
right.
and you want to be able to beat it. So like Akuma has, +3 power, +3 speed, threatened at you with like 4 gauge up, and you just want to hit him, and you're worried about taking 12 damage.
Sure.
Well, now you're not only worried about taking 4,
Right.
and all of his power boosts don't do anything.
Right. And obviously, if you have exactly 5 life, that's
Yeah.
a pretty good use case. The other thing I'm noticing is that this is a continuous boost that causes a strike,
Yes.
which
So you
means
can
that
use it to get +2 power and strike.
it is effectively +2 power and F strike, which could be cool.
Yep.
Okay, so it might end a boost war or something like that when you think you have an advantage.
Yeah. You can also put it into play with uh, Mechanical Genius.
Oh, sure.
So you can use that to be +2 power and strike too. Um, and then
Saves you the force cost. You've already spent the pretty good attack.
yeah, and it's put a boost into play now strike, which is not bad on Heidi.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. You get your force rebate that way. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is continuing the theme now that we've covered all of our specials that all of these attacks, or at least the ones that we care to attack with,
Mm,
are decent and then get really stupid with boosts.
yeah,
And the things that we want to be boosting with some exceptions, right? Like we can get
yeah.
some really scary stat boost on this
Mhm.
guy. It sounds like we are a lot of our stats are coming from normal boosts.
Yeah. There is a boost that we'll get to on an ultra that is generally the one you're going to recur the whole game.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder what it is.
It's
Um
actually not that one. Funny enough,
oh wow, that's
it's the other
scary
one.
too.
Yeah, that one. That
Yeah,
one's like really good.
those are both messed up. But no,
Uh,
I can see that. So I guess boost ultra and normal and then strike with specials and then use these two as my uh recursion or boost cheating tools
yeah,
is
and
kind
like
of like the 10-second Heidi game plan.
yeah, and like your normals are fine too. Normals with extra boost on them are good. Like assault with 4 extra power is really good.
Right.
Dive with any amount of extra speed is great. Your grasp can have 7 power if you wanted to.
Right.
Your cross can be speed 8, so it's like they
Yeah,
can't do anything about it.
because like I mean I guess the design wisdom here is like these cards are designed around the fact that with boosts on them they get pretty crazy but not like busted. But these cards on their own are probably just better than my like without boost in play, sweep is sweep and focus are higher value than any of these cards that we just named as attacks. So when I put awesome boosts on awesome normals, that's really scary. It seems like.
Yeah,
Okay. So the update to the 10-second Heidi game plan, uh, boost a lot rather than boost with a specific kind of card, and then strike with your good attacks.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right,
Shall we talk about the ultras?
sure. So let's start with this one because you seem to really like this boost, and I like this boost a lot too. But we'll start with the
I
attack.
just saw that it
Yeah.
had a 4 force cost on it, and it got me excited to talk about.
Yeah, well, sometimes Exceed lies to you, and this cost is a lie. You never pay for it from
Right, you use some other way to cheat it into play.
yeah. Um, so this is effectively the similar to the other Dagger Strike. So you have Dagger Strike install, which is the special, and Dagger Storm
Right,
install, the Ultra. They kind of do the same thing, except for this one is better because well, it's an Ultra.
right. Oh,
Um,
very similar stat line too.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's one more power, and that's basically the difference. Um, so you pick up the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you may play any continuous boost among them without paying their cost and discard the rest. Do not discard those continuous boosts at the end of the strike. So there's a few big differences here. First, it puts the boost into place immediately. So if you're in exceed mode, you'll get the +2 power before you actually do damage because hit effects happen before damage.
right.
The second thing is that this is considering resolve. Each of those is considered resolving a boost.
Oh,
So
so
you put
I'm drawing 3.
if you hit 3 continuous boosts,
Oh, okay,
yeah. And then the third thing is that if you put any stats onto this card that actually matter, like power or armor or something, it will affect the strike.
okay.
So like if you put a grasp into play, it'll add 2 power.
Potentially 4 power.
Yeah,
Okay, so all of those things get like those every single caveat you mentioned is upside.
yeah.
Okay,
And then they don't go away. So you can strike with this, get a bunch of boosts out, draw a bunch of cards, deal a bunch of damage, and then pass it to your opponent with a bunch of boosts in play.
okay. This also being a pretty solid, again, exactly like Dagger Strike. It's above curve at range 3. This is a pretty solid defensive option. I could conceivably use my opponent's turn to boost a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned early on that my ultras are not a particularly compelling use of my gauge, and I can see why from the comparison to just always having +2 power. This seems very strong, though.
It's good. I mean, it's probably pretty crazy for an ultra in general. In Heidi's kit, if you're spending 3 gauge on this and you're not exceeding, you lose out on the consistency that you have with the +2 power.
Okay.
If you can play this after you're exceeded, sure, it's a great card. The other thing is like you might not hit continuous boosts. I have played this card before, and hit like assault focus, and those cards go to your discard. So you can't get instant boost back from your discard. So if you actually flip
Oh,
any into there, they're gone.
and that especially if our plan is partially based on our ability to loop focus over and over again, that can matter a
Yeah.
lot. Okay.
Yep.
So this actually brings me to another question, something you said about exceeding and then using this attack. Uh, I haven't noticed any particular gauge generation. Um, Generating 3 gauge over the course of a game is reasonable for pretty much everybody. Getting to 6, usually over the course of a game, I can get to 6 gauge, maybe not all at once, but that's kind of pushing it if I don't have any other consistent ways of getting in. And it seems like once I've exceeded, I'm going to kill the opponent pretty fast.
Yeah.
So is the mitigating factor for playing her ultras after I've exceeded more just that the game won't last very long, so that I won't actually really have a need to do it?
Yeah, I mean the dagger storm is also a good way to finish a game. I mean, if you have 3 gauge after exceeding, usually the opponent is probably pretty dead, and
Okay,
then you finish with this, and then you punch them for 5 to a lot more than
sweet,
that, depending on what you flip.
right.
Um, yeah, um,
Okay,
like if this,
this is a potential game finisher, but because of Heidi's gauge generation and the speed at which this game is going to go, I'm probably not going to be able to make use of this outside of the pretty late game, assuming I'm
yeah,
prioritizing my exceed mode.
yeah, generally you're gonna use this in the late game, in either case where you didn't have enough gauge to exceed, and then you're just gonna use this because it's the end of the game, and they're likely either dead or you're going to be dead very soon.
Hmm.
Or you've already exceeded and it's in the late game because you've exceeded and now you have more game.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. What about Boundless?
So the boost is +2 power, +2 armor, +2 guard. In exceed mode, it's +4 power, +2 armor, +2 guard.
Yeah, that's a
That
lot
is a
of
lot
that's
of
a lot of
numbers.
stats. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's very good. The only thing that this card, I mean, like it's crazy good. The thing about this card, right, is that Heidi doesn't have any guard on anything other than artillery cannon. So if the opponent can deal 5 damage, which is not out of the realm of possibility, they can still stun you.
Right.
Um, and 4 power on its own is good anyway. So you have to be aware of that. Just putting this stone to play and threatening on something is great. Um, However, a lot of the time, the best stat that people find is speed because
The hit.
going first is good. Um, Now, this card is not bad by any means. If you stick this on pretty much any of your specials or your normal, you're probably going to win anyway. Like, it's really hard to beat a lot of things. If you stick this on a soul, it does 8 damage and has 4 armor and guard. If you're in exceed mode,
Yeah.
um,
Again, other than cross, this beats
yeah,
every normal.
and then you take 1 damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then like sticking on anything else is pretty good.
okay. And again, this force cost is fake. I'm cheating this into play after I've gotten it into discard. No,
Or
that's instant boost only, right? Um,
uh, no, it's continuous from discard and it's instant from hand.
instant from hand. Okay, so I will pay this to move, or change cards or
Yeah,
something,
or block
and
or something. Yeah,
yeah, and
or
then
for a force cost on one of
and
your
then
specials.
get it back into play. I will I'll find some way to use my various cheat boost cheating abilities to get this in without paying a cost.
Yeah.
And it kind of whatever I put it on is becoming really threatening.
Yes.
Okay.
Um. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the stats on any of these cards, it's pretty good. I mean, it's 4 power if you're exceeded, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of
That
power
that
by
alone
itself.
is really
Right.
scary.
Yeah. That's also why if you look at Heidi's power across the board, most of her cards are like 2 to 3
Right.
power.
Right. Yeah, because when you add this onto it, it turns out that gets out of hand very, very quickly if she has a bunch
Yeah.
of 5 or 6 power. Oh, look, here's 5 power,
Yeah.
here's 5 power, here's 6 power. So
Yep.
to your earlier point about normals being good with these boosts, yeah, I would love to hit for 10 on sweep.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Um.
And then how about rail driver?
So the rail driver attack is fine. It's stun immune, which is like the best thing it has going for it. Unfortunately, this loses to grasp, which is like the bad part about it.
Right.
Because while you're stun immune, it's only 1 to 2.
Right.
Um, like you're gonna trade probably with flows with this, or if your opponent is punching you for a lot, you can at least punch them back. And hit at the end of the strike, play a boost from your hand without paying its cost is the same text as uh well, it's play a boost. It's not play a continuous boost, but it's almost the same text as Dagger Strike. Like Dagger Strike is continuous boost, where this is any boost.
Okay, so but this one doesn't this
It
one
doesn't
doesn't
sustain.
sustain it.
Yeah, yeah. So generally, you're gonna
Whoa.
play instant boost of
You're
this.
gonna use it to run around or
Yeah,
reposition or something, but you cannot use it to affect the strike. Yeah, that's does not seem super exciting unless you really need to move.
no, yeah, move or like I don't know, parry something
Parry,
or
yeah, because it can't be tech either because your opponent will have cleanup is happening. Their boost will be discarded.
yeah. It's really awkward,
It's
but
for the Heidi mirror match when they're not discarding their continuous boost because they have some sustain effect and you want to get rid of it anyway by teching it.
this is another one of the instances where cleanup order matters because if technically if both players are playing Heidi and you know uh one person plays like dagger strike and then the other person defends with rail driver, the person who's initiating does their quote unquote cleanup effects first and then the other person. So
Oh. I wonder if that's still. I mean, we cannot derail talking about this. We cannot derail driver talking about this. I wonder if that is still true because it says at the end of the strike instead of
yeah,
cleanup. Because I know that those are like very technically different timings. Because I had a lesson on Sydney and Serena with Poyman. And I know that there's some weird jank with that. This is for the Exceed scholars. This is a beginner lesson. We cannot figure that out here. I don't think.
yeah,
Um, in any event, it sounds like that doesn't matter because the reason that I'm playing this card ever is for its boost.
yeah. This boost is not fair at all. Um, It's one force, move 1 or 2 spaces, +2 speed. Now the modern templating would be now move 1 or 2 spaces, and then the +2 speed would be the boost part
Sure,
underneath.
sure. So,
Um,
but already, light is awesome. And
yeah,
light makes, you've mentioned adding +2 speed to many of my cards makes them pretty unreasonable.
mhm,
Um, moving on top of that, 2 range for my projectiles, or even just from range 1 to range 3 to mess them up with spike or dive. Um, yeah, that seems really, really scary.
yeah. It's really good. The other thing is like, you know, it's it doesn't come up often, but if you hit it off of like Dagger Storm or something that puts a boost into play, you can move during the strike or things like that.
Whoa. Okay. So this could also. I mean, it won't let me dodge anything,
Not, yeah,
but it will let me set up for again defensive option. Sounds pretty good. I'll be able to use on my opponent's turn to get into position and boost
yeah,
for my incoming turn. All right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like
That's screwed up.
Heidi doesn't like range 1 that much, but then you boost with this, you get +2 speed, you go to 2 or 3, you can get out of the corner with it. Um,
It essentially
it,
gives me everything I want. It refunds
yeah,
its own force cost by if I'm playing it raw. I can get it from my discard pile. I'm never going to run out of this boost, and even if they parry it out of my hand, I have more
yeah,
copies of it than they have tech. Like,
yeah. You effectively have 8 lights if you want them. Each run through your deck if you
good
play it
lord.
right. Yeah,
Okay, so I always have +2 speed in play.
yep,
Sometimes I use them to move around. Sometimes I use them to. God, that's really really messed up. I guess
yeah,
sometimes I even have +2 speed because I have +1 speed and an EX attack.
yeah. And then the rail driver also gives +2 power if you're in XE mode, so it's a better way of the
It's
warrior.
Way of the Warrior with movement. Good lord.
Yep.
Okay, so these numbers are unreasonable. Right now that we've gone through everything in the kit, it almost doesn't matter what her cards look like because putting these numbers on normals is super messed up.
Yeah,
So In terms of how this impacts my play pattern, obviously I'm going to be looking at all of my boosts, specifically the really, really scary ones, and saying, huh, this seems like a pretty good way to spend my turn.
Yep.
Then my opponent either strikes into me because they think they can defuse my setup, or they pass the turn back to me and we're boost warring or something.
Yeah.
Typically, is is it is her rhythm boost strike, boost strike, or is she more incentivized because she does have this economic rebate to boost strike or something like that? Is she extending this boost advantage, or is she typically paying out pretty quick?
Generally, if you know you're going to win the strike, then you strike. Unless you're risking getting hit for more back, which is rare because Heidi hits pretty hard.
When she
Um,
succeeded, sure.
yeah. Um, just because a lot of the time, if you boost and then they pass it back to you, one of your cards will win, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it.
Okay. So
You might not have that card, but
I'm looking it's actually kind of a an Akuma play pattern. Like that
yeah.
that offensive set play, I'm putting down one boost that makes me super messed up. My opponent has exactly one turn to deal with me. If
Mhm.
they pass turn or if they insufficiently deal with me, I'm killing them.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. And so these cards being kind of customizable boost delivery mechanisms means that I can look at a handful of these cards, a handful of these boosts, and find combos and say, all right, well, um, these two things together, probably not anything more than that. Probably
Mhm.
I'm not looking for an attack with three boosts on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
And
sense.
like, what are the so like the other thing to consider is Heidi puts down a boost. What are the answers that your opponent can do without, just giving up and dying? They
Right.
can boost back, they can move, or they can strike you if they think they have a card that is okay.
Right.
If they boost back, you're Heidi. You're winning a boost war. The only other characters that really can boost war with Heidi are like Ryu and Eva. That's about it.
Yeah, there not a lot. I mean, some characters might have boost quality, especially in season one. I know that like this is the
Yeah, there's
land
some of that stuff. Yeah,
of swift destruction and whatever that super messed up boost in Vincent's kit is. Like there's a few really scary boosts, but Exceed Mode Heidi also having +2 power on every continuous boost she throws is over the line even for that.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
boost warring is not a good idea.
So then there's moving or striking. If they're moving, they're giving the turn back to you anyway, and you can either move back or put another boost into play or strike them with a different card.
Right.
So that's not always the best answer. And then if they're striking you, usually they're striking without a boost and you have a boost in play. So a lot of your cards are better than theirs just because you have more numbers on them.
Sure. Okay, so it's kind of a taxi meta idea that you are setting up your turn. You're using your turn to set up to make it unfeasible for them to aggress into you on their turn. And this
Yeah.
is at a time in Exceed where action compression essentially doesn't exist. Now strike effects are pretty rare. Movement
Yeah.
and strikes in particular are pretty rare. Um, the ability to do a lot of things on your turn is sort of offset by how big stats can get,
Yeah.
and her stats are pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, they have three options that are not perfect, and then if they don't choose one of those, they're passing the turn back to you, and you're almost certainly winning the strike and dealing a bunch of damage to them.
Okay. Yeah. So you get and then as you mentioned, that's their opportunity because unless you're doing something to sustain your boost, you finally don't have something in play.
Yeah,
And
Heidi is not good at playing fair.
okay. So if she gets caught without a boost in play, none of these cards are very good.
Yeah, I
Um
mean the Iron Knuckle and the Dagger Strike are fine for defense, but then
but
you're using them instead of
you're
boosting.
losing really important
Yeah.
utility tools when you use them.
Hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to be relying on my normals for pretty much any kind of defensive play if I get caught without a boost. And at some point in the game I will. Like that's just going to
Yeah.
happen. I can't always have a boost up
Yeah.
if I'm paying out. Um the normals themselves, is she are there any can we play the same boost versus attack game with my normals, or am I kind of using every every side of these cards, the way that I would with any other character, or pretty evenly, or anything like that?
So block, sweep, and grasp are really good on her. Block because it's free gauge.
Right.
It's not free, but
It's
if
it's
you're on your
it's
front side,
nearly
yeah,
uncontestable gauge. Even if you
yeah,
go down in life or lose momentum from the strike or something, you're at least
yeah,
getting gauge.
yeah. And then you draw extra cards, and your momentum comes from being in exceed mode, so you'll swing back eventually.
Right.
Sweep is just good. I mean, sweep as a card is good, and when you stick a bunch of stats on it, if you add any boost to this with in exceed mode, it's at least 8 power,
Right.
which is a lot of power.
Already enough to stun focus.
Yep. And then if you're just using it for the boost, it's either +2 speed or +2 speed +2 power, which is Way of the Warrior, which
Yep.
is a
Which is
notoriously good boost.
really, really strong anyway.
Um, so sleep is very good. I mean, sleep is very good in most kits, but
Sure.
yeah.
Often one of the best cards you have. And
And
then
then
grasp
grasp,
is that just because it's a really good it's really good. It's easy to land bonus power with it because it's so fast.
yeah. I mean, it's 5 damage or 7 damage, which 7 speed, 7 damage is an ultra level card.
Yeah,
And then
that's super scary.
you boost it for 4 power, and like if your opponent doesn't have a card that threatens you well, you're threatening 4 extra power on anything.
Yeah. So both sides of those cards, and parry is a strong utility boost. You can use it to disrupt people's hands. Like both
Yeah.
sides of these cards are very strong.
Mhm.
Um, the rest of these, I've got my uh, cross to get away, backstep to get away if I need to.
Mhm.
Uh, we mentioned a couple times that assault plus a lot of my boosts gets pretty stupid.
Yep.
Any other particularly strong uses of my normals that we should shout out?
I mean, dive and spike are really good when you add stats to them. They're mid speed
Right,
usually. Like they usually beat things that are slower than them, but then there are when you get to a certain point, there aren't cards that are slower than them. Or
right,
sorry, there aren't cards that are faster than them.
right, and they beat everything slower than them, so they just win
Yeah.
strikes clean. Um, and focus is reading,
Yeah.
and having lots and lots of copies of reading uh from
Switchbox.
Switchbox sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah. Um.
So I'll be using both sides of this card pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like she makes really good use of her normals. Like they're just good cards in general. I mean, like your specials are generally better than them in most cases, but they're still good cards.
Okay. So I'll be using them when I'll be using them on defense.
Yeah.
Because I don't have good defensive options when there's no boost in play. Um, I'll be using them for their utility. Um, and when their unique shapes respond better to my boosts than my normals do, which is
Mhm.
often, right? Sweep,
Yeah.
grasp, like EX assault, all those things are things that my specials can't cover.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll be using, there's no like prescribed way to use these cards. I'm going to be finding those things in the moment, and all pretty much everything I can do with my boost is going to be really strong. It's just finding the best possible way to use them. Any other kind of like high level strategic notes about the way that we should be thinking about running Heidi, or should we move on to counterplay and how to stop her?
Yeah. There is another thing that is some people do, some people don't. I like to do it a lot. Is that when you find an EX because you go through your deck, hold on to it, because one of the best things you can do to defend yourself when you're on defense is to defend with an EX.
Right,
And Heidi will have a lot of times where she cashes out, hits the opponent for 6, 7, 8, and then has to just get hit because she can't defend herself.
right.
So if you hit them for 7 at range 3, and then now you're sitting there at range 3 and they get to do whatever they want. If you have an EX assault to defend yourself, then not only did you win the previous strike, but you just won the strike that they hate you,
Or
or
at
they
least
were they.
it's like it's still let you participate in the mix up at least.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're
And
drawing a lot of cards anyway, so you can probably find EX attacks reasonably easily.
yeah.
Okay,
And yeah. I mean, a lot of the times you'll just run into them because there's some cards that aren't useful in the situation. and you'll hold them until something happens.
Right. And it sounds like between her recurable, really, really strong movement effect, between all of her card draw, she isn't going to really hurt too much on her economy. She's got pretty prescribed uses for her gauge. Um, I'm not super worried about running out of cards or anything like that.
Yep.
And in the short term, I'm not worried about running out of cards because I'm constantly getting more. In the long term, I'm not worried about running out of cards because my opponent's going to die first. But
Yeah.
um, in terms of managing my economy, are there any difficulties with it? Do I ever really need to spend force or make difficult decisions about spending force rather, or is it usually pretty straightforward?
I mean, there are some difficult decisions because a lot of the time you'll have, 5 cards in your hand and you'll end up with like a copy of Dagger Strike, Iron Knuckle, like and like 3 of these attacks. Let's say you have all 5 of these cards,
Right.
right? So these are your 3 ones you want to stable boost to. These are the 2 ones you want um
Boost.
to boost, yeah.
Right.
And there's not always gonna be a play that doesn't use up the cards you want to use later.
Sure. That's Exceed, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
that's the game that we are playing.
Mhm.
Okay. So, but there isn't really any advice that we can give in an hour and a half long guide about what cards to spend because it's going to be a moment to moment, matchup to matchup thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to mention about Heidi, or should we move to counterplay?
I think we can go to counterplay.
All right. So now that we've talked about everything that she can do, I'm dying to know what can my opponent do to stop me.
So the first and most like the best advice, at least in my opinion, is don't let Heidi exceed. Now that's
Right.
not always possible, but
Right.
it's she gets significantly more powerful when she's on her flip side.
Right. So
Um,
at least play with the knowledge that she's going to be prioritizing Gage in the early game and punish her for it.
mm,
Okay. So um she's looking at block and on curve attacks or above curve attacks really strong as really strong options early. So play to beat those.
yeah,
Okay.
you are generally not going to be able to trade with her or beat her in exceed mode. If you can push her life total down when she's on her front side, then you'll have a much easier time finishing the game. Um, Similar to a lot of the season 2 characters, where the longer the game goes on, the less likely you are to win if they're going to get set up.
Right. Right. So
Uh,
basically rush her down and specifically rush her down when she doesn't have boosts in play. It sounds like.
you can either rush her down or you can play conservatively so that she doesn't get gauge. Like if you just nullify the strike for both of you and she invested a bunch of resources, and even if you did, she's gonna go through her deck faster. She's gonna run out of the stuff that she wants to use when she's in exceed mode. Um, like consider crossing out if it's gonna get you out of something that you're pretty sure is gonna happen. Just because she doesn't get a gauge,
Right.
it's similar to how you play against some of the other characters that are gauge hungry. Even if you both use resources and do nothing, the other character relies on their gauge probably more than you do.
Right. And Heidi investing quite a bit into any given strike that she throws means that she's losing quite a bit of value if she does whiff.
Yeah,
Okay. So as Heidi, I'm sorry, I should have asked this earlier because we're sort of deviating from counterplay now.
sure.
But as Heidi, because I'm so focused on getting Gage in the early game, is my early game do I usually boost in the early game with any other intention than to get Gage? I'm not trying to set up kill shots in the early game. It sounds like any boosts that I would do early on are with the eventual goal of exceeding, not the eventual goal of making an attack that's really strong. Is that true?
Yes. The other thing that you want to do is Heidi is you want to force your opponent to use the cards that beat you in the early game, because if they don't have them in the late game, then you are more powerful than them, and they don't have the cards that beat you.
Okay, so if I do boost something, it might be for a long term gain rather than haha. witness my power. I've set up this unbeatable strike.
Yeah,
Okay.
like
So
like this is not a perfect example, but Ryu has Way of the Warrior too. It's,
right,
I mean, his is actually on the card, but
right,
if that's the card that you're gonna have trouble with because you just have trouble beating either Way of the Warrior or Metsu Hadoken, then forcing him to use it to stop you from getting Gage means if you can eventually get there, he doesn't have it on his first reshuffle, and he either has to reshuffle early or he doesn't have it when you're exceeding, and then he just doesn't have an answer in general.
right. And you can sort of check that off the list of things that he can do to stop you. So
Yeah.
segueing back into counterplay, then another thing my opponent needs to manage is while they're um, trying to deny Heidi Gage is to not do that. Is to not
Mhm.
run themselves out of all of their best tools.
Yeah. They can either not run themselves out of all their best tools or know when to reshuffle.
Okay.
Like Heidi can deck herself if you play around her enough. And that is somewhat of a viable option depending on your character. But it's kind of difficult when you're getting hit for 2 extra power every strike. Um, so if you're like halfway through your deck and Heidi exceeds and you don't have the tools to deal with her, even if she hasn't reshuffled yet, reshuffle.
You're
You're
not
gonna
under
die anyway.
you're not under enough card pressure to delay the reshuffle. You need your good options to keep her at bay long enough that you might
Yeah.
deck her out.
Yeah,
Okay.
like your options are, try and deck her, get her to a reshuffle, and probably take a lot of damage, which is not good. Or reshuffle and play the game, and try and chip in the last health you need.
Right.
Um,
And obviously the other bits of counterplay are sort of uh they're obvious to the point that maybe we don't even need to mention them, but like you already we've already said like don't dive tech.
yeah,
That won't be enough on its own to stop all of the boosts that are going to be coming your way, but um don't get rid of those options frivolously.
yeah. I mean, you do have to get rid of them eventually because then you run into the Ryu problem of if you hold on to your dive forever to beat Metsu or Way of the Warrior,
And then they
then Ryu
reading your
just
dive.
leaves the dive. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially with Heidi with 6 of them.
right. Yeah, it's going to happen at some point. Okay. Um, so it sounds like they're playing a pretty careful game against Heidi, where they are either trying to deal so much damage in the early game that uh, even the threat of her exceed mode isn't enough to close the game out, or they are denying her enough value that in the late game when she's exceeded, she's invested too much into any given strike to be able to make it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Uh, I mean, I feel like I've got a pretty solid understanding of the way this character works now. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, Faust, before we wrapped up the lesson?
Sure. I don't know if it's been said for some of the other season 1 characters, but Um, a lot of the season 1 characters are generally considered slightly unbalanced. I mean, it was their first try at the game. A lot of the characters are either like too strong, too weak, or some are a little in between.
Kind of
I do
janky,
think,
but maybe
yeah,
workable. Yeah.
I do think that Heidi is slightly above what a Exceed character should be. I think she's fair enough to be played in Exceed with modern characters,
Sure.
but I do think her power level is above what probably should be printed nowadays.
Okay.
So
So
if you end up playing her with somebody that plays, modern characters, you might find that she feels stronger than you're used to.
okay, and sort of keep that in mind. Uh, the social dynamics of this game are such that people can get salty at a loss. So uh, please Heidi responsibly. Maybe not to the extent that we have to worry about somebody like Alice or Carmine, but be careful when using her.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Well, Faust, this has been awesome. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Had a great time learning about Heidi. Viewers at home, hope you enjoyed it too. Go out play this character. She seems pretty fun. Um, until next time, everybody. I will see you then. Have a good day. Goodbye.